I've tried to do this so many times. I really hope it works this time. I've struggled to even write the outline for this video because I just don't know where to begin. My mind is so warped right now. It's all I can think about. It's all I can talk about. And now I have to share it with you. We've got to talk about the Telepathy Tapes, a podcast that was recently sent to me by a friend. And when I say it's reality altering, I am not being facetious. It literally sent me into ontological shock. And it's honestly so beyond worth it. And I can't get enough. But first, my name is Sundown, and this is Logically Free-Spirited, where we will blend science as well as spirituality and logic as well as intuition, all while exploring the human experience. So let's dive in. In their own words, this groundbreaking series challenges everything we think we know about communication in the human mind, inviting viewers to step into a reality where the impossible is not only possible, but happening every day. And that's literally what this is about. The impossible happening every day. Real life magic. But before getting into this, I do want to say I have no personal affiliation with the Telepathy Tapes in any way. I am merely a listener, a fan, and dare I say, advocate of what it represents. I'm making this video out of love of the work and respect for the host, Kai Dickens, and her collaborators, and all of the doctors and teachers and crew and families working to get this information out. I'm just making this to spread awareness and hopefully help in my own way. But I really don't know how to begin. That is the magnitude of what this is about. It's paradigm shifting. The Telepathy Tapes explores how nonverbal autistics communicate, not only with each other, but with others. And by others, I mean voice users like myself. And they're communicating telepathically. I'm going to say that again. The nonverbal autistic community is communicating telepathically, and they have been. I'm not pitching this as a theory. I am not proposing it as an idea.
This is not a drill.
I am telling you that this is happening, and it has been, and we've all been ignoring it. It's been censored and ignored. That's my dog. But before I go deeper in, let me start by briefly explaining the concept of telepathy as well as a definition of autism. The current definition of autism is a neurological condition that affects how someone learns and behaves, as well as how they interact and communicate with others. And telepathy is mind-to-mind communication, so speaking without words, usually involving two people, a sender of the message and a receiver of the message. So mind reading. And this podcast dives deep into the science behind this phenomenon. It introduces children from all over the world who can do this, and they demonstrate it repeatedly over and over and over and over again, reading the minds of their caregivers and their mothers and their teachers, and in some instances, just anyone around them. It also explores why this information has been silenced, and it doesn't shy away from the controversies or the implications of what's being said. If the nonverbal among us have been able to hear our thoughts, any of our thoughts, I cannot imagine the things that they've had to bear witness to. But it also explores what this could mean for the future in the most wonderful way. And I think we can all use more good news. Sorry, it's my dog. And now a siren. But it also explores what this could mean for the future in the most wonderful way. And I think we can all use more good news. Part of that good news is that it doesn't seem to just be a few people. According to multiple non-speakers introduced in the podcast, all people in the nonverbal community have this ability.
All of them.
It varies from person to person, but apparently the ability is there. And the main reason it goes largely unknown by the majority is because there's a lack of presumed competence in the autistic community. They're treated as though they aren't in there, as though they're not capable of rational thought, as though they cannot learn. They definitely cannot teach, so why even try? That has been the running theory. Without the ability to easily verbalize any thoughts or manage certain functional motor skills, there was no way for these people to tell us otherwise until they learned to spell. And even that, I want to rephrase, learned to spell. From what I understand at this point, these people are actually geniuses, and they're having to dumb down their communication efforts so that we, the speakers, can understand them. Apparently and understandably, telepathy seems like a superior way to communicate. The nuance of emotion and meaning doesn't have to be deciphered by tone or punctuation or facial expressions, i.e., trying to figure out if that text message or email was sarcastic or sincere.
It's written in plain English. What does it mean?
The thought is just directly and clearly and wholly communicated.
Do you get it, Lana? Sandra, do you get it?
My point is that the autistics that start to spell have made it very clear. They know exactly what's going on, and they know way more than we can comprehend. There are multiple examples throughout the podcast of these spellers demonstrating knowledge that defies reasonable logic, like a girl who can read obscure hieroglyphs, or a 5-year-old boy who speaks over 8 languages when his family speaks just one. And not only can they read the minds of others, they're communicating directly with each other across zip codes all over the world telepathically on another dimensional plane on these mental mounds they call the hills. And there's proof, and I'll get to that. The Telepathy Tapes starts with Vanderbilt-educated filmmaker and our beloved host, Kai Dickens, learning about Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell from another podcast, The Cosmos and You. I've linked it below. It's wonderful. Dr. Powell is a John Hopkins-trained neuropsychiatrist, speaker, author, and researcher who joined the faculty at Harvard. So a very real, very solid academic. And truly, she is fascinating. I highly recommend listening to any podcast that she's on. But in this one, she's discussing her research studying savants. And she noticed that the majority of savants are autistic and or blind. Savants are people who demonstrate exceptional aptitude in something that they have no previous or formal training in, like Ellen Boudreau, who can play music perfectly after hearing it just once. She can also tell you the current time down to the minute without ever having the passage of time explained to her or ever seeing a clock, because Ellen is also blind. And she maneuvers the world not with a mobility cane, but with echolocation by chirping with her mouth and listening to the reverberations around her. This woman is autistic. She's also a savant. She's also a fucking badass. Or Stephen Wiltshire, who can accurately draw detailed landscapes of cities after seeing them briefly just once. There's a link to a video of him demonstrating this in the description box below. Or James Henry Pullen, the genius of Earlwood Asylum, who created a 10-foot, highly detailed wood replica of the SS Great Eastern, down to the miniature furniture in each room. In the Cosmos and You podcast, Dr. Powell begins to discuss her research, eventually revealing that among the savants she studied, she found a number of telepathic autistics, and she came to believe that telepathy should be treated as a savant skill like any other. Understandably and thankfully, this hooked Kai, and she reached out directly to Dr. Powell, and the Telepathy Tapes were born. Kai starts off by first reviewing Dr. Powell's previous research and experiments, eventually moving on to conduct many, many more alongside her and other credited and notable doctors and scientists. So they start by meeting the families virtually and eventually moving to in-person meetings. And these kids are nailing it nearly 100% of the time. And that is statistically unheard of. It's absolutely mind-blowing. And all of this is recorded. They do various types of experiments using random number generators, image generators, word generators, picture books, textbooks, card decks, all sorts of things. And all of these tests involve the autistic person and their telepathy partner, often a teacher, a therapist, or parent. So let's take the textbook, for example. They would hand the non-autistic telepathy partner a book and have them open to a random page, and the autistic person could tell them the page number they were looking at. They could finish any sentence. They could tell you what the third word on the 7th line was. They could read all of it.
That's incredible!
Either while sitting blindfolded on the other side of a partition or facing the wrong way or across the room or in another room completely. In some instances, in a different building or at least on the different floor. It's crazy. Again, nearly 100% accurate. I say nearly because there have been some mistakes, but very, very few. Nearly all experiments were completed with 100% accuracy repeatedly. Different kids, different situations, different tests. But here's an interesting thing I found from listening to Kai on a different podcast. They actually discovered that the accuracy or the ability to type to begin with was often highly dependent on the energy around the speller. It didn't make the final cut of the telepathy tapes, but Kai told a story about a boy who was unable to spell when in the presence of a disbelieving producer. When they kindly asked her to remove herself, he went right back to accurately, telepathically communicating and typing. Zero mistakes.
Well, what can you expect from a non-believer?
And this is just the beginning. It gets so much more involved. So my first question was, if Kai's a filmmaker and all of this is recorded, why am I not watching this? Why am I listening to this? And this seems to be for two reasons. One, funding. Documentary filmmaking is expensive, and conducting experiments that hold up to scientific rigor with people all over the world is expensive. And two, time. The amount of information in each episode is absolutely astounding, and I have no idea how they would ever condense it. I'd be heartbroken for whatever they left out. However, there is more good news. They are working on a documentary, and they are accepting donations. There is already a trailer cut, and you can find it on the website, telepathytapes.com, along with a fundraising link. I've also put everything in the description box. I do know that they have been in talks with streaming services and production companies about a potential docuseries, but rightfully, Kai is being extremely picky on how to go about this, making sure that they are protecting the families at all costs. Honestly, we need more Kais. But my next question was, why is this not world news? Why is everyone not talking about this? The podcast dives deep into the current and historical science and research of the phenomenon. Kai talks to former teachers and therapists that have been experiencing and exploring this topic for over 30 years. This has been going on. People have known about it. So why has this been hidden and censored? I do not want to take away from the podcast at all. So please do yourself a favor and check it out.
Just do it.
But I will say, the Telepathy Tapes answers this question. They discuss the religious fears around ESP, as well as the controversies surrounding the communication methods. Not just telepathy, but how these kids are communicating that they're telepathic, how they are indicating what page number their mom is looking at across the room, the ways in which they are spelling or typing, with letterboards or iPads. This form of communication has numerous different names and iterations, including spelling to communicate, spelling to communicate, that's it, and facilitated communication, supported typing, rapid prompting method. And all of these involve a letterboard where the autistic person communicates by pointing at each letter, or an iPad where they can physically type either letter by letter or using word prompts that are generated by their typing, kind of like the predictive text feature on the iPhone. But skeptics don't trust this for various reasons, all of which I personally call bullshit on. But listen to the podcast and tell me if you feel differently.
I think you'll agree with many other thinking people.
Okay, so earlier I mentioned the mental mounds called the hills. If you are already familiar with the telepathy tapes, you may be surprised that I am saying hills, plural. Again, I cannot get enough of this stuff, so I was listening to Kai in another interview, and she mentioned that she recently learned there's actually more than one hill. But for those who haven't yet listened, I'm going to try and explain this without giving too much away. Throughout her research, Kai comes to learn about the hill, a place where these non-speakers collect and communicate telepathically, essentially where they hang out, but in their heads. And throughout the podcast, there are multiple examples of proof that this is actually happening.
It's all happening, people. It's taking place around us, okay?
Namely that prior to the podcast airing, different teachers, parents, and therapists from all over the country who do not know each other brought up the hill, unprompted and unprovoked. Apparently, the non-speakers are going there to socialize and to learn and to teach one another. Again, like I said, once able to communicate, these people are providing incredible displays of knowledge and understanding, ranging from science to spirituality, from language to math to music to everything in between. And they've all repeated the same thing. They're learning from each other and they're learning on the hill. The only reason none of us knew about this was that lack of presumed competence, because they don't communicate the same way we do. And without the presumption of competence, society felt no need or reason to teach them or give them the tools to spell. But man, did we get things wrong.
What if we've been using the wrong tests to quantify intelligence in children with autism?
This is also not in the podcast, but I recently learned again from Kai about a young autistic boy who is working with doctors and scientists to help find relief for autistics with severe brain-body disconnections. He apparently pointed them to a particular element on the periodic table that they hadn't previously considered an option for healing. And then he told them not to put it into a pill or an injectable, but into a lotion that could be applied topically. So they did, and they're testing it, and apparently it's working. It's incredible. Again, this isn't in the podcast. I'd love to dive deeper into this research, so let me know if you want a video on it. Okay, the final question. What do we actually do with all this information? In one afternoon, I binged probably the first 4 or 5 episodes, and I found myself emailing Kai directly and singing her praises, telling her my mind was officially blown and asking how I could help. She recently mentioned in another interview that a lot of people have been reaching out.
How can we help?
She said the main thing that anyone can do to help right now is to get to know the non-speakers in their community by volunteering and partnering with organizations in their area, by getting to know these people, by getting to know who they are and what they have to say, what they're interested in, and how to best communicate with one another. Massive shifts will start happening. Not just shifts in the autism community, but shifts in the world as we understand it. If non-speakers could be paired with speakers in fields that they're interested in, like the boy working with the medical team, the breakthroughs and the scientific discoveries, the music and the artwork we could be given, the lessons we could learn, it would be innumerous. And the implications of what this could mean for our future are ineffable. But we'll never see that future if we don't recognize these people, if we don't give them a voice, give them respect, treating them not like other, but as part of the whole. So awareness is the next great step. It's why I'm making this video. It's why I just signed up to volunteer in my community. The podcast gets into the roles that energy plays in communication. It goes into animal telepathy and two-way telepathy. All of these I'd love to talk about more. So let me know if you want a part 2. I think mainly I want to talk about the mind-body connection and disconnection. For instance, what does this information mean for multiple personality disorders? What does it mean for spontaneous savant syndrome in people who have had traumatic head injuries or near-death experiences? What does this mean for reality? So again, please go listen to the telepathy tapes and share it, and then come back and let me know what you think. And please like and share and comment on this video so that the algorithm picks it up and it gets out to more people. Again, awareness is the next great step. And truly, there's so much more to say. So let me know what you want me to cover next. And remember, always embrace both critical thinking and intuition. And until next time, remain logically free-spirited. Oh my goodness.